G'day guys, and today we need to get into some new information concerning Christine Blasey Ford's sexual assault accusation against Brett Kavanaugh. It could be potentially backbreaking. Now I do want to clarify, I only say potentially as this is no concrete evidence of perjury, which is the claim that is being made here. It is merely an alternative testimony that contradicts some of what Dr. Ford has said. It could go somewhere, it could go nowhere, but it is certainly a shake-up in this trial of public opinion. Now, before we get on to the meat and potatoes of the letter, I just want to remind the audience about a few things. Remember that the testimony of Christine Ford was delayed because she said she was scared of flying, so she wouldn't fly from California out to DC to testify. She also mentioned that she suffers from claustrophobia, which originated from the supposed assault. And most importantly, whilst testifying under oath, she adamantly denied that she had ever trained or coached someone in passing a polygraph test. These are the 3 points I want you to keep in mind as we get into the letter. So here we go. I, redacted, this would be the ex-boyfriend, am a current resident of redacted, California. I first met Christine Blasey, now Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, in 1989 or 1990 in California. From 1990 to 1991, I was just friends with Ford. From approximately 1992 to 1998, I was in a relationship with Dr. Ford. Now, this 6-year stretch is something that can be easily corroborated by friends of Ford or friends of this supposed ex-boyfriend. I found her to be truthful and maintained no animus towards her. During our time dating, Dr. Ford never brought up anything regarding her experience as a victim of sexual assault, harassment, or misconduct. Dr. Ford never mentioned Brett Kavanaugh. Now, to be fair, this doesn't prove anything. You can hear the most ridiculous stories of how people have suppressed memories and they keep it buried inside forever and they bring it up 10, 15 years into a relationship, so I don't particularly regard this as anything significant. During some of the time we were dating, Dr. Ford lived with Monica L. McLean, who I understood to be her lifelong best friend. During that time, it was my understanding that McLean was interviewing for jobs with the FBI and the US Attorney's Office. I witnessed Dr. Ford help McLean prepare for a potential polygraph exam. Dr. Ford explained in detail what to expect, how polygraphs worked, and helped McLean become familiar and less nervous about the exam. Dr. Ford was able to help her because of her background in psychology. So that statement, or that paragraph, directly contradicts what Dr. Ford said in her testimony. According to this supposed ex-boyfriend, she had indeed coached someone in a polygraph exam. If this is true, Dr. Ford has committed perjury. Moving on. Dr. Ford and I lived together while we were dating and stayed together in a long-distance relationship when Dr. Ford moved to Hawaii sometime around 1998, although I am not sure of the particular year and it might have been a bit earlier or later. So of course this contradicts her statements about being scared of flying overland from California to DC, because she was perfectly happy to fly overseas from what I assume is California to Hawaii. While visiting Ford in Hawaii, we travelled around the Hawaiian Islands, including one time on a propeller plane. Dr. Ford never indicated a fear of flying. To the best of my recollection, Dr. Ford never expressed a fear of close quarters, tight spaces, or places with only one exit. I assisted Dr. Ford with finding a place to live in redacted California. She ended up living in a very small 500 square foot house with one door. I lend more weight to these statements than the ones above because this is a long period of time. This supposed ex-boyfriend, has known her for 8 years is a long time to observe someone's behaviour, even passively, and to not have noticed something would either indicate someone who is so well at hiding something or someone who isn't actually scared of flying or fear of closed spaces. Again, I should point out that this isn't evidence of Dr. Ford saying, yeah, I lied on tape or whatever. It's just a counter testimony. Despite trying to maintain a long-distance relationship, I ended the relationship once I discovered that Dr. Ford was unfaithful while living in Hawaii. This is really interesting. Because to portray someone like that after going out with them for 6 years and to cheat on them takes a special kind of person. So she's a cheater. After the breakup, I took her off the credit card we shared, but nearly 1 year later, I noticed Dr. Ford had been charging the card and had charged about $600 worth of merchandise. When confronted, Dr. Ford said she did not use the card, but later admitted to the use after I threatened to involve fraud prevention. Ooh, that's not a good look. So she's a cheater, and she's a liar, and she's a thief. Doesn't look good for her. It's just a counter testimony. It's not evidence of anything, but if this is found to be corroborated, and this claim can be corroborated if we get a hold of credit card statements, because if Dr. Ford is still charging this card for $600 worth of goods, I should say, after 1998, well then there you go. We can prove that this really happened. I didn't speak again to Ford until about 2002, when Ford contacted me briefly. After that, I hadn't thought much about her until I saw a story in the Washington Post on Sunday, September 16, 2018. I do not want to become involved in this process or current investigation, but want to be truthful about what I know. Signed, redacted, the 2nd of December, 2018. Well, I'm sorry to say it, buddy, ex-boyfriend, but I think you're going to become involved if, CNN is willing to track down, was it a kid or was it an adult? Anyway, it was a random person who made a GIF criticizing them. I think they're going to track you down if you're threatening their narrative, essentially, and their choice of Supreme Court nominee. I think the entire media and many activist groups, activist individuals will be gunning for this person's identity. And I expect we'll know who this person is very shortly. And this is quite sad because he has explicitly mentioned that he doesn't want to be involved in this process and being redacted as such. But people are going to want to find him so they can discredit him somehow. And whether this will, take the form of, oh my God, he's a Trump supporter, or it'll be the 6 degrees of separation thing. So Ford's ex-BF knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who collects World War II antiques, and, he had a few pieces of Nazi equipment lying around, so therefore Nazi, and they can just discredit his opinion and throw it out. So yes, at this time we can only take this with a pinch of salt because it hasn't been verified yet. It is capable of being verified. We can track down this Monica L. McLean person. She should have come forward and said, obviously, I'm sorry, but my best buddy Dr. Ford here has totally perjured herself, but she hasn't. So we can find out if she's still working for the FBI or the DOJ or the US Attorney Office. And we can be like, hey, is this true? Do you want to corroborate this story? And, it could be a he said, she said thing. She'll back up Dr. Ford, and then, this claim isn't as valid, I suppose. But there are other things, concrete things that we can look up. There, house ownership. If Dr. Ford, owned a house and it was in her name in Hawaii, and this small house in California somewhere, although it doesn't give us a suburb, so that does make it hard to narrow down. Certainly the credit card thing could be corroborated if credit card records were a thing back then. I'm just assuming they were. And, obviously, as I said, if they find out after 1998, if Dr. Ford is still purchasing things and it totals to 600 and such and so forth, this could be a very, very important document. Because if it's found out to be false, if it's a false flag planted and then, this guy's magically going to be on tape talking about how he needs to fake a letter, and it was all a false flag by the Democrats or the media, whoever, that would obviously destroy any sort of counter-narrative just by association. Oh, the other person who criticized Ford or questioned her testimony was, just doing it for the money, or he was a total false flag. It would be a false flag within a false flag, so to speak, and that would discredit, others who have spoken out against Ford's testimony. Or this could be a massive boon. Imagine if this statement gets corroborated and it is confirmed either through friend's testimony. Oh yes, Dr. Ford did indeed admit to me that she had cheated on this ex-boyfriend of hers, and she did admit that she had, stolen money from him through the credit card, and she did admit that she lied to this ex-boyfriend of hers about using the credit card. if it is revealed that at least at one time, 2 decades ago, she was a thief, she was a liar, she was a cheater, and she had no fear of enclosed space and she had no fear of flying, it destroys her current testimony, and she could face jail time for perjuring herself, since she did say, "I did not ever coach anyone in how a polygraph exam worked," and we have this explicit statement that we can corroborate by speaking to Monica L. McLean. This won't be like, the straw that broke the camel's back. This will be the 50,000-ton oil freighter dropped on the back of a helpless camel and will just destroy it forever, depending on which way it swings. I must again wrap up and say this is just a he said, she said testimony at this time. He's saying one thing, she's saying another. We need to corroborate and see what will happen. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.